Hello, good evening. My name is Robert Meekins, and I'm coming to you from New York. Um, and this is the Seeker's Reset channel. And the Seeker's Reset, I'm going to explain to you in this live. Um, well, who am I, first of all, other than Robert Meekins? I'm someone whose life is going through and has been going through a fundamental change over the last decade. And that has included a very extensive period of spiritual seeking and searching and healing, mostly in New Age, shamanic, psychological, um, in those circles. But I've done hundreds of modalities, maybe not hundreds, but at least a couple of hundred modalities that I've invested myself in. Um, Probably about $500,000 worth of work that I've done with coaches and practitioners and shamans and therapists and priests. And I mean, you name it. I've done a lot. Hypnosis, chiropractics, acupuncture, NLP, quantum work, network spinal analysis, so many different forms of nutrition, supplements, homeopathy, therapy, God knows how many standard therapeutic modalities, mostly focused at times on Freudian, Jungian, inner child work, meditation, so many different kinds of meditation, silent retreats, ayahuasca retreats, psychedelic mushrooms, many different forms of plant medicine. Yeah, I mean, that's just a brief list. I've done many different things. Breath work. I spent a month and a half at a holistic rehab center for depression and anxiety. I've lived in an intentional community briefly. I've traveled the world looking for what I thought would heal me. And that's what brought on this concept of a seeker's reset. I'll explain it more in a subsequent, of what the seeker's reset actually is in a subsequent episode. But suffice it to say that the seeker's reset is the moment when the search ends. And it's the opportunity for the seeker to finally reset to nearly, if not default settings. And it's a term that my partner and I came up with, I believe, because I haven't seen it used anywhere else, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. My partner and I came up with it about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And for a very long time, I have resisted beginning to share my story. And if you're like me, and if you find this, then you probably don't like talking about your story either. And that's mostly because of how bizarre, absurd, and just downright unbelievable it probably is. And my intention in this is, in fact, to find people and communicate with people who have had similar experiences as I have. And to relay what I'm capable of relaying. So as I said, like for me, for many years, for at least 5 years, I thought I was preparing myself, like buttoning everything up, dotting I's, crossing T's, so that I could deliver this message cleanly and as if I had already completely accomplished completed the healing. And the truth is, for the last 3 years, I kept getting worse when I thought I was on an upward trajectory for the first time in my life. Not the first time in my life, but the first time in my conscious life, after having certain awakenings that made me much more aware of the life that I was living. And so again, if you are like me, then you're here and you're going to find this because you have had some kind of similar experience and you're trying to find it in you to discuss it. And if not discuss it, at least own it and realize it is your life. And that even though we have to transform and largely resort back to a more original state of our being, this is still our life experience. And that matters. So partly because I was afraid to show my face, didn't feel like I was ready, and partly out of respect for what I could feel was something that was very sacred, that I didn't feel ready to communicate. Because one of my biggest criticisms of many people as I went through these many years of working with practitioners and therapists and groups and coaches, as I went through many years of that, one of my biggest criticisms became that so many people seem to be offering something that they haven't actually achieved. So I'm coming to you telling you that I'm aware of that. I haven't fully achieved it either, whatever it really is. We'll talk more about that. But circumstances in my life, within me and outside of me, our circumstances in the world and the way I read and track my own life, which I'm sure, again, if you are like me, you have begun to track your life. And you've begun to recognize the spirals, the cycles, the dates, the times, the places, the faces, the names, the things that come to you and the experiences that you have at uncanny times and moments. You've been tracking your life. But you also probably feel like there's something you cannot control, which is rendering even all of this knowledge and awareness that you have almost useless. So I got to the point just recently where I realized I can't keep waiting. That something is propelling me to begin sharing, even though I don't feel ready, and even though I know that it is incomplete. And I am incomplete, and I have not yet completed the metamorphosis that I desired to complete before I began sharing. And dare I say, even to some extent, teaching. But I don't consider myself a teacher, but I aspire to that. And I do believe that sharing is a type of teaching, but it's not exactly the same. So I have gotten to a point in my life where my progression seems to demand that I begin to put myself out there, which I did not anticipate. I didn't expect it. The challenge for me here will be to remain humble to what I know and to what I actually have to offer. The other challenge will be that because so much of my recent awakening and such a spark of change in my life has been the discovery of what's called divine truth. And divine truth will be a big part of many things I discuss here. It is what it says. It's divine truth. It's an actual subject taught by Jesus and Mary Magdalene, who are alive on this earth in a returned state. As far as I can tell, that is the truth of who they are. I've met them. I've spoken with them. I've learned from them. I've seen their home. I'm not going to go deeply into divine truth now, but every single episode will refer to divine truth, and it will always be present in the show notes at the bottom. But suffice it to say, divine truth has been the big turning point in my life. And simultaneously, knowing divine truth scares me about doing this because I know that I am not at all advanced in divine truth. And yet it also propels me to do it at the same time. It's very interesting. So this has been on my heart and mind for at least 5 to 7 years to begin sharing this. And so it's interesting to come to sort of the end of a 7-year cycle and for this to be the next step. And I will be doing this in relatively short segments of like 10 to 20 minutes mostly. Where are we at now? We're just over 10 minutes. And I will be doing it by topics that are going to be cumulative, and they will rarely be purely spontaneous. They will almost always be somewhat pre-designed and thought through in terms of like a particular, like almost like a curriculum, but not quite, at least a sequence. And right now it's going to be very rough. I don't have a lot of good material. I'm living at my parents' house. This room is the room I grew up in. I slept in this room for almost 20 years of my life, more actually, almost 22 years of my life. It now is utilized mostly as like a semi-office, and also my nephew, when he's here, he sleeps in here. And so his bed is right here behind me, and a lot of his things, his books, his toys, things like that are here. But suffice it to say, like, this is part of the humbling. Like, I anticipated eventually that I was going to be ready to present in some sort of professional, really well put together way. And I am far from that. I am at probably the lowest point in my life physically in terms of my material means. But something inside me has come alive. And I am praying that I am in fact right, that this is a moment when there are many people like me who are ready to hear this kind of thing, and who are therefore also ready to own their lives much more, own their experiences, and harvest from their experiences real gifts, and also make the move to returning to who they really are, to who you really are, to who we really are. And I believe divine truth is an essential component of that, which will be spoken about more, maybe in a moment. We'll see. But let me cover some more basics and fundamentals. Number one, there are no comments and no chat when I do these. And the reason is simply that I'm completely open to receiving feedback from you and or communications from you. I'll put my email address in all the time. But comments and chat are not something I feel capable of monitoring and moderating right now. So I may change that in the future. I've also taken this out of the Divine Truth YouTube playbook. They also don't have any comments on their videos or live chats when appropriate. They don't do that. I think it will keep it cleaner. And eventually, I have a feeling something more communal can be created, but that's not my goal. It is my goal to connect with people if you have a sincere interest in connecting with me, but it's not my goal right now to create some sort of a community. That's not my primary purpose. So thank you for accepting those ground rules, if you will. But you may message me by email at any time, and I would look forward to hearing from you if you're sincere about connecting and talking. I also I will gladly accept donations. I'm resetting my life financially. I have a tremendous amount of debt from a lot of my own search and mistakes that I have made, many, and I will definitely catalog those in various ways throughout the progression of this channel, or the evolution of this channel. And so yes, I will accept donations. And so if you feel called to give them, that is much appreciated. My intention, again, inspired by divine truth, but also something that I had on my heart prior, is I want to make eventually what I do on this channel will become a platform for what I expect will be like part of my life's work. Um, and so I want my life's work eventually not to be a paid service. So right now it'll be a small thing on the side that I do, although I hope to pump out as much content as I can in the near future for varying reasons. Um, but but I do not want to make this paid. So I will accept donations for it completely at your own volition and your free will. But my intent, much like divine truth, is not to make it a paid service, and so to earn money elsewhere in my life right now, which is a whole other story that is, very, very big challenge for me at the moment. And so thank you in advance if you choose to do that now or ever. But again, my conviction in going into this is simply that there are people like me who are having tremendous difficulty finding their voice and taking ownership of their life, and trusting that their experience matters, and that they're meant to do that you're meant to do something with it. I can't tell you what. And if you're like me, you also have to be very careful about the border between having a gift and a service to provide based on your experience versus becoming narcissistic. And we'll talk about that in subsequent episodes as well. But there's a tricky line there. And I'll be experimenting with that myself as I do this. It's part of my own challenge and learning. So what else will I say? I mean, I think I've gotten some of the main points across. If this resonates with you, you are at a crucial juncture. You know that you are within striking distance of something incredibly important in terms of your own development, and yet you feel like you can't really trust yourself. And maybe you shouldn't. I'm not going to say you should always. But this isn't just going to be a channel where it's like all the time I'm pumping you up with, you're almost there, you got this. That's not the point. The point is that you actually are at a moment, and we're going to discuss that moment, and we're going to discuss it in ways that relate to my experience and any feedback I get from you. Okay. The other big piece of the equation is going to be how it relates to the collective. And for me, at least, again, and I suspect that people who find this will have a similar experience, but for me, at least, the COVID phenomenon and saga, the epic of COVID, was a tremendously defining moment experience in the evolution of my own of myself. And I've yet to find anybody who's talking about the COVID experience the way that I have experienced it. So I believe there are other people out there who have had similar experiences and made similar observations. And again, if you found this channel, and you either will know what I'm talking about or you won't. And I would really encourage you, like, don't even bother following if you don't feel like we are syncing up, okay? Because this is really intended for people who, I'm not looking for a following, is what I'm trying to get at. So it's going to be very much intended for people who really feel like they know what I'm talking about. And along the way, I'm going to discover if what I'm talking about has the legitimacy that I think it might, but it may not, and then I'd have to abandon it. So this is a kind of a very informal introduction to these things. I didn't even tell you much about myself, but I was quite successful throughout my life, but also terribly irresponsible, and went through a series of booms and busts again and again in my life. Always felt like I was trying to do what I was told to do. Always felt like that that I was told, this will be the answer. And if you do this, you're going to be fine. And I would do it. I would excel at it. And then I would hate it. And I would crash. So again, this may be a pattern that you've experienced in your lives too. But I was very irresponsible, terribly immoral, I'm coming to learn. Always kind of knew that something was wrong, including with my own behavior, but never had the courage or the will to follow that impulse. Largely, I accepted other people telling me everything was okay. Largely, I sought out people who would validate me not needing to change. I convinced myself that I was far more noble than I was, even though deep down I was completely vacant. And I still experience that vacancy today. It's actually become a dominant feeling that I'm currently experiencing, in fact. Yeah, was very religious for a time, atheist, religious, spiritual, new age. I owned a business for a while, sold the business, made a fair amount of money, broke a lot of laws, mostly tax related. Helped a lot of people, but really didn't help them. Like, they felt helped, but at the core, I didn't help. I mostly just made them feel good about themselves and gave them things that made them feel safe, like money. Eventually realized that essentially all of my success was predicated on lies and falseness and an inflated sense of myself, until finally I completely collapsed, and I've been in a more or less impotent and pretty useless state for the last 3 years. After feeling like I was at the top of my game in 2022, I thought I was the most magical version of myself ever. And then I became impotent, like just totally crashed, and experienced several years of just torture in the form mostly of PTSD, depression, anxiety symptoms, which really was driven by emotional suppression and an awakening to how bad my life was, which is still something that is hard for me, that I'm not fully facing, both my behavior and the things that have happened to me. I'm sorry for the disorganization of this. I do intend to become more organized. Broadcasting from here is difficult. I don't have a lot of time to do it. But my desire right now is just to kind of get this information out there and see what it feels like to do that. And if anybody takes interest, I'm going to do it anyway, because I feel like it's just an important part of my process. But so I'll probably pump out like 5 to 10 episodes pretty quickly, and they'll mostly be very informal and not particularly well produced. So we'll see whether you take interest in that, and I'm looking forward to giving it a shot either way. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching, and welcome to the Seeker's Reset.